All right, so I'm working on a 2018 Ford F-150. It's a four-wheel drive. It's got a 10R80 10-speed automatic transmission in it. And the complaint is it had a hard shift, and it did. It was a violent shift between first and third, but on very, very light acceleration, it would go into second and neutral at times. It was intermittent. And also it would do the same thing in fourth. Looking at the application charts and the solenoid charts, really didn't see anything connected. This is actually the first time working on one of these 10 speeds for me anyways. And so I thought I'd do a little video. What we've decided is to change out the valve body because you know, you have the pump, which is basically the heart. You have the clutches, which is basically the muscles of the thing. Then the actual case and the physical hard parts of the skeleton, and the valve body is the brain. And anytime you have any kind of shifting issues, it's usually going to be the brain of the thing, the valve body. So because it wasn't a consistent problem, we determined that that's probably the best place to start. We gave the customer an option. This actually got high mileage on it. I believe it has 122,000 miles on it. And so we told the customer either replace the valve body with no guarantee that that was going to fix it, because we're not 100% sure that that's what it is, or replace the transmission with a full warranty. And so they decided to go with taking a chance with the valve body. And this is what I've done. So I've already removed it, and I'll show you what I've done so far, and I'll kind of give a detailed analysis of the reassembly. All right, so this is the actual, after the valve bodies have been removed, I'm letting it drain. So I just don't it's got a little bit still coming out, so I don't get it all over me. It's 8 bolts. Well, counting the filter, because the filter's got 2 bolts, where it's assumed that you already have the filter off, then you have 8 bolts remaining holding this thing in. But the tricky part is this electrical connector going to the solenoids on the actual valve body. And it's a lever type connector, so you have to bring it down and work this out simultaneously, and it's kind of a pain, but it's actually a pretty straightforward design. I believe probably it was harder to take the transmission pan off than it was to actually remove the valve body. Now you can see this is the cooler assembly, and it's all wrapped around the pan, so all that had to come down just to be able to gain access to pull the pan out and then remove the valve body. And on this one, the exhaust was very tight, so we had to use a pry bar and give a little bit more clearance with the exhaust to actually get the pan out. The pan's made of plastic, and these heat shields are actually wrapped around it as well, so I had to remove those, part of the removal procedure of the pan. Real pain. All right, so this is the actual valve body that just took off. That's the top side of it that actually mates to the transmission. You want to be mindful of this seal area here, that on the new one that's in place and not nicked or anything like that. But like I said, it's 8 bolts. There's a tube, and I'll show you on reassembly, but there's a tube that goes from here and about to this location right here and bolts to the valve body. That has to come off first. Then you loosen this lever, just loosen it, and then you remove the 8 bolts, and as it comes down, you pull the connector out. Very straightforward. And over here is the actual new valve body that as soon as that's done draining, I'm going to reinstall. This is the bottom side of it, and that's that connector. And this one, I believe, yeah, see, it has that seal in place. So that's a brand new one right there, and brand new filter. Pretty unusual looking filter. And this is the pan. And this is the pan over here. This is a reusable gasket. Typically we'll change these, but this is so new, they're really not available. And this pan is made out of plastic. So I'm gonna clean all this up and then get ready to install this valve body. All right, so I'm just kind of making sure these fluid transfer ports are kind of free of debris and grit. I'm gonna put this new valve body back up in there. It's amazing they had it in stock. That tells you a lot. Usually we'll have to wait several weeks or days anyways for parts. And for us, this is a relatively new procedure. We haven't done this before on a 10-speed. And so they're just now going out of warranty, and so we're getting to experience this. But like I said, it's kind of telling that they had it in stock at the dealership. It's kind of awkward here, so I'm gonna wrestle this up in here. So as you go up, and I'm gonna come above this cooler assembly, trying to support this as best I can. I might have to move around a little bit. Like I said, this is my first time doing this. And get the electrical connector up under it. So that lever is critical to getting this thing in and out. So there's 8 bolts that you initially install that holds it up there, but there's actually 11 bolts total. And I haven't looked at the filter bolts, but all the other bolts are the same length. So it's kind of prevents you from making a mistake. So I'm gonna just get 2 of them in there finger tight, and then I'll install the rest. I'll show you the locations. Got this drain pan all up on me. I hate doing valve bodies. They're just poured junk all over you. All right, I'm gonna let that rest right there. Shoulders giving out. Got a little tool here. Now I can rest. All right, so this lever here is an absolute pain in the ass. So you have to start it loose, not fully, because it binds on this right here as you're coming out. And once you remove the 8 bolts, the 8 remaining bolts holding this up, and you kind of angle it down and work this connector out. And then when you come back in, the reverse is true, and then you work it in and you secure that little lock. So I want to show you the bolt locations that hold it in. You have one here, you have one here, you have a bolt that goes here, and I've got that one. Got that one in right there. Then you have one right here, 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 and here. And then there's another bolt that on this assembly right here, which goes right here. That portion goes up into that port right there, and then this bolts right here. There's a seal that you don't want to forget, and it slides right up in here. The new one does not come with it, so you have to be sure to transfer that seal. And then of course the 2 bolts that hold the filter on as well. So those are your mounting bolts. It's actually pretty easy. That was a bit of a struggle, but other than that, the pan's much worse than actual valve body removal. So if you're going to take this on, anticipate the pan being quite a pain. You can see I even lowered the stabilizer bar just to get the cooling assembly to come down far enough to get the pan out, and plus we had to pry on the exhaust. So I'm going to finish putting this back together and verify the fix. So there are 6 of these studded bolts for holding this heat shield in place, protecting this plastic pan and this exhaust right here. So they have specific locations for them, so you want to be mindful of that. So there's two cooler lines. They have seals on them, and you just want to kind of make sure they're free of debris before you put them up in there. You know, stuff that might have failed when you were disassembling it. They're pretty good about not leaking. This is the same setup as like on a 6R80 or 6R140. So on most late model Fords, they don't have a dipstick up top, but that right there is actually where the dipstick is. So you got to take that cap off. It's a 19mm cap, and there's a small dipstick in there. And so I'm about to fill this up, and how I do that is we use a suction gun and just open the ports. Now this is actually OEM fluid. This isn't your typical LV like what's in the 6-speed. This is a ULV. And don't ask me what the fine details about the differences are, but it is a synthetic fluid. But that's what I'm about to do. I'm about to fill it up right now. So what I'll do is I'll put fluid in it until it gets to the top of that. I'll put the cap back on. Then I'll lower the vehicle, start it, raise it back up, and then fill it up the rest of the way. That's the procedure. That's the cap. And that's the dipstick. All right, so I got the initial fluid added. Now I lowered it down and I've started it up to finish topping it off. I put the cap back on just so on startup nothing surges out. I mean, I don't think it would, but you can't be too careful. So after you go to all the work, the last thing you want is either your fluid, expensive fluid to keep down, or something to fall in there. So there's two indicators on here. I don't know how we can see that. Let's get another light on this. So you have a C range, or you have an A and a B range. And typically what we'll do is we'll bring it up right between the two. And you have a top level, a hot level, but that's typically where I put it. And it's not super critical. Once you get to that point, it's not like if it's not exact, it's going to be too low and it won't function correctly. So that's what I do. Here we go. So I've got 10 quarts in there already. I don't know if you can see that level. I still got a little ways to go. Probably another quart will get it. So approximately 11 quarts. Pull the valve body on a 10R80 Ford 10-speed automatic transmission. It's going to take about 11 quarts to fill it back up. Got to go another quart. Now obviously, it's a catalytic converter right here. It's super hot, so you want to be careful, but you do need to check it periodically. What I'll usually do is I'll put 5-6 quarts in before I start it up, let it down, start it up, and then I'll probably dump another 3 quarts in there at least. Then I'll start checking it. periodically. And so I'll grab it like that so I can avoid the catalytic converter. Need just a little bit more. All right, so that's where we're at. Call that good. So this has got to be programmed. Well, it's not, maybe programming is a misnomer. The solenoid strategy has to be installed in the powertrain control module or the transmission control module to compensate for the new setup of the new valve body. So I have to get it programmed, and then we'll test drive it and see if it fixes it or not. You don't have to like torque this down incredibly tight. Snug it up and it'll hold. That cap's made out of aluminum, you'll break it. Alright, let's let it down. So that's the programming information, that when you replace this valve body, it has to be, the PCM has to be updated with this new solenoid body strategy. And so you got to be sure to do that. And if you're doing this yourself at home, you still want to go to a place that can keep this paperwork and have that solenoid strategy done. I can't tell you how many transmissions that we get in, whether it be GM, Ford, or whatever, but they don't do that programming, and it ruins the new transmission. So be sure to do that. F-150, getting ready to program it right now. Hopefully that takes care of it. So got the valve body installed, got it programmed, test driven. Seems like problem solved. But the owner of the shop where I work, he told the customer that he wouldn't guarantee the transmission. I mean, the part's guaranteed for sure, but as far as the, you know, the possibility that if there was a failure in that valve body, that it caused damage in the transmission, well, obviously that's not going to be covered. And he gave them the option of replacing the transmission because it was such high mileage, or, you know, patching it with the valve body, and they chose that route with the understanding there was no guarantee that the transmission would last. So anyways, it was a successful repair, and sent them on their way. Looks like the Ford's 10R80 10 speeds are going to be our next line of gravy jobs, bread and butter. Feel bad for you if you got one that's bad though. You can bring it on down. We'll take care of you. That's right. Thanks for watching.